Good morning, everyone. This is John Shaw, the director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Thanks for joining another installment of our series, Meet the Mayor. And today we're privileged to meet a mayor from the city of Kankakee. Chasity Wells-Armstrong is the mayor of Kankakee. She's a lifelong resident of that community. Attended Governors State University, where she studied social work, had a wonderful career in social work, won an award, a prominent national association named her Social Worker of the Year for Illinois. She's been active in her community, has been on the school board, city council, and then 2017 was elected, mayor of Kankakee. She is the second woman elected mayor and the first African-American. So Madam Mayor, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Well, tell us what it's like to grow up in Kankakee. I know I pass by there a lot, and it looks like a beautiful community. I love your riverfront. I just it's really spectacular. So tell us about growing up in Kankakee and about your community.
Well, I am very proud of my hometown. When I grew up, it was a very close-knit community in terms of families, and that's one of the unique things about our city is that we have generations of families that have been born and raised in our city. So it's not uncommon for me to run into somebody that I went to high school with and I'm now meeting their child or grandchild. So it has that small town charm. We are a diverse community. That diversity has been evolving since I was a child. And so now we are about 40% white, 40% African-American, and 20% Hispanic. So we do have a very diverse community. When I was a little girl, there was a lot of industry in our town. And of course, like many towns in the Midwest, we lost a lot of that. So we did see some downturn, with economics and such. But I really feel like we're starting to come back and rebuild and redefine our story and who we are. You mentioned the riverfront, and that's one thing I'm really proud of. That's an initiative that I started as mayor to develop our riverfront. We have a beautiful Kankakee River, and many people enjoy it, and we want many more people to have an opportunity to partake in what it has to offer.
Good. Were your parents from Kankakee? Did all your family stick around, or?
Yes, parents. Yes, born here as well.
Okay. And then you went to Governors State University and studied social work. Tell us about what drew you into social work as a profession.
I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So I've always taken care of other people and looked after my cousins and, people in the neighborhood. I really ran from social work for a long time. I graduated from our community college here, KCC, but it took me a long time to really commit to social work. So I became a mother very young at 18 and kind of had to find my way. And, I took a social work class and kind of had a light bulb moment that this is what I want to do and committed to it.
Well, you had mentioned, we're talking about Kankakee, that there'd been industry. And I think I saw in one of the debates, there was some exchange about the community, how it changed. And was there like a large Quaker Oats facility, or what sort of industry was there, as you were growing up in the,
We had Quaker Oats, we had Mobile Chemical, which became Valspar. They make paint and it's now Sherwin-Williams. We have 2 hospitals. We're fortunate for a town of 26,000 to have 2 hospitals. But in terms of other industry, we had Gould Battery, and we had Roper that made stoves. So we had, it was not uncommon for people to migrate to Kankakee, particularly from the South, and they could settle here and have a middle-class lifestyle and raise a family and live comfortably and not have to necessarily be college educated. Okay. So we saw that start to turn in the 80s, and we had white flight out of our community when crime increased. And, we still are dealing with crime. We just had a shooting last week, so we're still dealing with the impact of some of the things that have happened systemically in our country, but also in our city as well.
So what brought you to public service? I know I think you were on a high school board, then you ran for city council. What was the impetus of running for elected office? How did that happen?
Well, I had my light bulb moment when I took my first social welfare policy class, and I had an instructor, just like every student has that one professor that I connected with, Dr. Adele Sanders, and she really encouraged me to get involved and really helped me understand the importance and implication of public policy. So as I started to, ask her, well, how do I get involved? She made some suggestions about the NASW board since I was a social work student, and I became a district chair on the board of directors. And then I decided to get involved with the school board where my son was attending high school. I really never saw myself running for public office. But as I became more involved and, I took more policy classes in my master's program and just really, I had an opportunity to serve as a fellow, a policy fellow in 2007. And so I really knew that that was my calling and my passion. And I really felt like that was a place where I could make a difference. So I was, encouraged to run. I started out as a precinct committee woman, and then I ran for city council in 2015, and then decided to run for mayor in 2017.
And then you also worked for two lawmaking congressional people.
Mhm.
Was that like in their district office? And who were they? And tell us about that experience.
So when I was in my master's program, I decided to volunteer. At the time, it was Senator Debbie Halverson,
Okay.
and she went on to become Senate Majority Leader in the state of Illinois. And I was just so impressed with her ability to legislate, but also her ability to stay connected to people. She was very much a people person, a warm person, and so I asked if I could intern in her office 4 hours a week. I only, didn't have a lot of time. I was raising my own family and working, and she allowed me to do that. And she was running for Congress at the time. And so I jokingly, said, okay, when you get elected, if you ever need a social worker, let me know. And she won her race that November. And I am pride myself on, really working on networks. And so I had kept in touch with her staff, and they contacted me and said, hey, did we get your resume? And I sent it in, and the rest was history. I became her constituent services director in her district office in Joliet. And then I worked for Congressman Foster as well. Started out as his constituent services director, and then became his deputy district director in Joliet again after the redistricting. So I'm really fortunate to have had that congressional experience, and I like working at that level.
Well, so you ran in 2017. You took on a two-term incumbent. I was actually watching one of your debates last night on YouTube. And first of all, it was this wonderfully civil exchange. Obviously, you guys had different perspectives, different views, different life experiences. But the debate, at least I saw, was one sponsored by the NAACP, was remarkably civil. I was thinking to myself, gosh, that's how debates should be run. I mean, there was no, but what's striking to me is what you said is the question you pose to the constituents is, can Kankakee be better? Can we re-energize and kind of boot this community? And one thing that was striking, you said that if elected mayor, there'd be four things you would try to be: inclusive, strategic, fierce, and transformational. Take us through those four, starting out with inclusive and strategic.
Well, one of the things that concerned me about our previous administrations is that it kind of was like a monolithic, like everybody that was on the boards or, city committees were all kind of in the same network, which was the more affluent, came from the more affluent parts of our community. And I think that's problematic because we are such a diverse community and we are continuing to diversify. And if you are not hearing from the voices of everyone in your community, you cannot possibly implement policies that help lift everybody in your community. So being inclusive was very important. And I heard that a lot when I talked to people in the community. They felt like they didn't know who the mayor was. They didn't hear from the mayor. They didn't feel like they had a voice. And so I have been very intentional when, it was put before me the task of assigning people to committees and asking people to serve, that I'm very inclusive, and when I say diversity, I'm not talking about just ethnicity. I'm talking about age. I'm talking about, we have 7 wards in our community, and our 6th ward, the southern part of the 6th ward is a very affluent, and it's on the riverfront. But the north side of Kankakee is predominantly brown and lower socioeconomic. So when I say diverse, I'm not talking about just ethnicity. I'm also talking about where people live in the city. The people in the first ward should also have a say in what's happening in their library system. And so I've been very, very intentional about diversity in that way. LGBTQ, just being, open to all the different people that are in our community. So that was inclusive. Transparent and accessibility. Prior to becoming the mayor, we had no way of knowing what was going on in the city. I revamped our website. The website was very outdated. It listed elected officials, one that had been deceased. And I just felt like it was really a reflection on our community. As we all are dealing with global markets and just our digital footprint, we were so outdated. So I revamped that, and now people can see city council meetings in the comfort of their own home. So they have a government access channel now through Comcast. They can watch it on our website, the city's website, or they can go to our YouTube channel and watch. But every city council meeting and committee meeting is now public and accessible to the public, so they know what's going on. Strategic, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead, strategic. So I have been very fortunate to work with some dynamic leaders in this state and across the country. And I have maintained those networks, not only with my state elected leaders, but also at the national level. And then being the mayor, I've been able to get involved in some of the national organizations that represent municipalities, like the National League of Cities, the Mayor's Innovation Project. And so I'm able to leverage resources, not only, in terms of grants, but also knowledge, being able to tap into a brain trust, to address complex issues that we all are facing across the country. Well, tell us about Fierce.
Well, I grew up on the east side of Kankakee. Didn't come from very much. I had working parents, but I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My dad's a Vietnam vet, and there were some issues there. And I think a lot of people probably look at me and think, she's, who does she think she is? But I think I'm a kid from Kankakee. And I know that my city, has endured a lot, and I'm a reflection of that. I say that Kankakeeans have grit. And so that's how I lead. I lead boldly and with vision and with passion. And a lot of times I am considered the other in the room. And so some people may see that as bold or fierce, but I'm not afraid, and I'm here to work hard, and I want to continue to serve my community.
Well, shortly after elected, you went forward with this Kankakee Forward agenda, which had 3 different pillars. Do you want to walk us through those pillars? I know the first one is effective government and more transparent government, which is what you had suggested earlier. And I guess the other one focused on public safety, and the third on economic development.
Yes. So you'd like me to start with, I think I've covered the accessibility and transparency.
Yeah, so talk about public safety, because I know you also made a reference to just the policing issue, crime issue, et cetera. So
very disappointing when I became the mayor. Our police chief quit. Announced the next day after the election that he was going to retire. And I was out of town. I had been working for the congressman and running my own campaign, and was ready for a break. And took a couple of days with my husband. And so I got news, people were calling me, and it was on Facebook that, we don't have a police chief. I'm like, what is going on? Keep in mind, there was 3 weeks between the transition. So I won, and then 3 weeks until I actually got sworn in. So this whole this whole dynamic with the police department, just did not start out well. It was not a smooth transition. And I feel like what I'm experiencing is what a lot of African Americans or people of color experience when they are the first. We saw it with President Barack Obama. We saw it with Harold Washington. Other mayors I've spoken with across the country of color have had similar experiences where the police chief quits, those types of things. So that has been really challenging. But I'm coming up against a system. I'm a Democratic mayor. We haven't had a Democratic mayor in over 30 years prior to my election, and I am in a red county. So on the blue dot in the red county. And we know it's been very polarizing the last 4 years, very, very polarizing. And so what I represent and what I talk about is government that is accessible, inclusive, fair, and equitable. And equitable is not a term that we use here in the city of Kankakee. And when I say equitable, I believe that our police department should look like the people that they police. Right now, probably about 80% of my department is white, and I already described the diversity in the community. And so there's some anger against me about that, and people who have been in leadership in the department have never looked like me. And now there are people in leadership, and that's a problem for some of them. And so that's been challenging, but we didn't agree on a police chief, so that went on for a while, and now I have had a chief for a year, and he's done a good job. We're trying to make sure that we build relationships with the community, that we provide technology so the community can communicate back with the department, the Ring app. We've put in some technology to ShotSpotter to detect where gunshots are fired and help them to respond more quickly. And I started a public safety program in partnership with Cities United to address gun violence targeting African American males under the age of 25, because that's who is involved in most of our gun violence. But even some people in the community see that as racist when I'm showing data, I'm using data to show why we're making these policy decisions.
Tell us a little bit about Cities United. I heard you refer to that in a couple contexts. What is that program?
Cities United is a national coalition of mayors across the country. There's about 130 mayors who joined. It started from former Mayor Michael Nutter in Philadelphia and former Mayor Mitch Landrieu from New Orleans. Mitch Landrieu is a white mayor, Michael Nutter is a black mayor. They were meeting each other at conferences and kind of having these connections in their roles as mayors, and discovered that we're having some of the same issues as it relates to gun violence. So they started this initiative, and the goal is to reduce homicide among that age group, African American men under 25, to cut that rate in half by year 2025. And so mayors across the country, there's a network of us, there's training and technical support that Cities United provides. And we are all working on this issue. As you know, it's an issue that's impacting a lot of communities in the United States.
Right. Well, I noticed in that your debate in 2017, the one point of disagreement between the incumbent and yourself was whether the policing was even an issue that needed to be addressed. I mean, she seemed to think that things were working pretty well, and you were saying, well, from one lens, yes, but from other lenses, it's not quite as smooth as it might appear on the surface.
Right. And my opponents are twisting that narrative that I was blaming her for gun violence. She was asked, what were her thoughts on the people committing crime, and what were her thoughts on people involved in gangs? And her response was literally, quote, "These people have no values." And I disagree with that. And so what I was saying, what I have said is there's a disconnect. When you look at violence happening in communities, and your response is, we just need to hire 5 more police officers, you're disconnected from the root issues that are feeding crime, that are contributing to these things happening in your community. And that's what I was critiquing. They were seeing this as just a one lens black and white issue that, well, these people don't care. We all know, that kids want to belong, that humans have basic needs that need to be met. And humans will get their needs met one way or another. And sometimes it's in healthy ways and sometimes it's not. And we know that gangs, provide kids a place to belong, a love, as unhealthy as that is, protection, and they put money in their pocket so they can take care of themselves, or have access to resources. So it's not just these people have no values, is what I was saying. And we have to be committed to looking at the deeper issues of why this is happening in our community. And a step further, we have to be committed to addressing and correcting the wrongs that have been done, to people of color and to communities of color. And I started a conversation just this week at City Council regarding race, equity, and leadership, because we know that decades and decades, for hundreds of years, this has been going on in our country, where communities have been disinvested, that resources look very differently in poor communities than in more affluent communities. And we've got to get to the root of that and address that as leaders.
Well, another pillar was economic development, and you mentioned the riverfront and all that you're doing there, but you're also, I know, doing some initiatives on housing and other programs. How do you, and as you said, your situation is unique, of course, but lots of Midwestern communities are facing, tough economic times and trying to kind of, fill in the gaps when, large traditional employers leave town. So tell us about your economic development efforts.
Well, one thing, we didn't have a designated economic development director. So, and under my administration, we have hired a business attraction and retention coordinator. And I see economic development and community development under the same umbrella. And so we have revamped our economic and community development agency, is what they're called now. There was a community development agency, but no one really designated on doing economic development. So we have a planner now. We didn't have that before. So getting the people in there, talented people that can do the work. We've done things to make it easier to do business in the city, like, just things like, fillable forms on the computer where people don't have to come in and fill out papers. And, my business attraction and retention coordinator is engaging the business community. He attends, meetings with the downtown group. We're doing surveys to get feedback from them. We've been able to bring some support to them during this pandemic with the help of our federal legislators. And then the riverfront, we are so fortunate to have a river. There's so many towns that don't. And we've never utilized it. It's one of, our greatest assets. It's one of the cleanest rivers in the Midwest. It's on the National Water Trail. And so I'm like, it's time to be visionary and do something with this river. And so we have adopted a riverfront master plan. The city council and we worked hard on that together. And that was adopted in 2018. And we secured grant funding to do some land acquisition. And we have a spot picked out that we're getting ready to put a shovel in the ground, hopefully in the next year.
And I think you also looked at some of the models like from Elgin and Naperville that also have waterfronts that they've done some exceptional things with. Is that right?
Yes, we did. We toured a couple riverfront cities. I personally had a conference in San Antonio and I saw their beautiful riverfront, but we did go to Elgin. Naperville, I like to tease them. I said, this is really a stream, you guys. Kankakee has a river, so I'm just really excited about the potential that that can develop, from that potential. So we are working with a group that has developed riverfronts all over the country, and this is their niche, and we're really excited to get this project going.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you made reference to COVID. How has that affected your work as mayor? How has it affected your community?
It has been daunting on some days. No one who ran for public office ever thought they would be governing in a pandemic. And, people can say, whatever they want to say, but it's already a tough job being the mayor. I mean, you really carry the burdens of your community when things are happening in your community. And this is something that's invisible, we can't see it. And it's unfortunate because the divisiveness that we've seen at the national level has trickled down to the local level. And I have never seen anything like this at the local level. And so it's really hard because, you know, I am trying to balance public health with the reality, of the economy. So I'm being very pragmatic, and I think it's really exposed inequity. So, for example, I had someone on my team kind of make a complaint when this first started. And of course, it's inconvenient and people are frustrated. But this person owns their own business, and their complaint was I had to order, a bunch of computers for my staff, and that they're on back order. And I literally have a cousin who's a cashier at Walmart that's a single mother raising a son. She can't take off. You know, if the biggest burden she had was back ordered computers, her life would be so much easier right now. But she has to go to work every day. Her son is disabled. And so, people who are in those frontline jobs tend to be women, tend to be poor people, tend to be people of color. So it's really exposed, the inequities and that exist in our communities. And we've lost a lot of people, and we still have people that are saying this isn't real, even though, I talk to those families. I know, and it's sad because people suffer alone. You can't. I lost my sister during this time, not to COVID, but she passed away 2 weeks after this all started in March. And you can't even have the traditional sense of family gathering and offering that comfort and support to one another during this time. And people just feel isolated. It's just been really, really challenging. And now we're coming into holidays, and that's making it more challenging.
Right. How seriously has your economy suffered from this? I mean, obviously the human tragedy, speaks for itself and is almost impossible to describe. But in terms of your businesses, are they able to just kind of continue and kind of limp along, or how are they doing?
Some businesses, weren't doing well. We have some people in our city who are kind of stuck in the 1980s, and they kind of want things to be that way. They haven't really invested in their own craft, so to speak. So we have people that are still writing things down on paper and not, they may not have the best record keeping and those types of things. Then I've seen other people in the business community pivot well and utilize things like social media and Instagram to sell their goods and their services. They've been really creative. So there are some people, where this has been really devastating. I will say that when the governor put us into, mitigation, again, tier 3, that's when I had to take a stand. And, for my community, I'm continuing to encourage people to wear masks. I try to be a really good example. Even in city council, it's 3 of us in the chamber because we're not meeting in person. My technical people are there, but I still have my mask on, but we still have people that don't want to do that. And so I stood with my business owners and said, I'm going to support the decisions they make. I expect them to follow industry standards and best practices of how we can keep each other safe and clean. But if I just shut them down, it will tank our economy. We've seen, loss of sales tax, we've seen loss of video gaming, some youth tax. So we'll lose more businesses if we shut them down. Mm-hmm. And well, people are connected to this. People's jobs and livelihoods are connected to this.
Right. Well, during your debate in 2017, the one thing that you and your opponent agreed on very strongly was being a mayor was a full-time job with full-time responsibilities with a part-time salary. Give us a sense of what a typical week is like in your life as a mayor.
I usually wake up and start with phone calls about 7:00 in the morning. So that could be talking to a constituent. That could be talking to one of my department heads. I meet with my department heads very regularly. My comptroller I talk to almost every day because that's finances. And my economic and community development agency director, I talk to her frequently too. Her department is charged with all of our grant funding. and our public service programs. And we were able to secure funding from the federal government, and we launched a bounce back Kankakee program to help pay rent, mortgage, and utilities for business owners and residents. So she and I, talk very frequently as well. I have meetings. We all have been Zooming a lot. But the good thing about Zoom is you don't have to wear your high heels. You can wear your fuzzy slippers, and nobody knows the difference. So, so I have a lot of meetings. I serve, on our Convention and Visitors Bureau board. I chair our wastewater treatment plant board. So there's a number of responsibilities. Preparing for the meetings, city council, budget. Those are two that I attend regularly. I'm in regular contact with the police chief. So, it's a full day. It's a full day. When we were not in COVID, I would be going to events, in the community as well. So.
When mayors from various Illinois communities get together back in the day when you could get together and talk, what are the things you talk about, and what are the common issues that all mayors in Illinois discuss? I mean, I presume some of it is slightly critical comments about Springfield and maybe the lack of stability and certainty coming from the state government, but what are the sort of common clusters of problems or issues that all mayors confront?
I think one thing is that leveling expectations of what the mayor can do. Like, everybody has all these expectations of what you can do, what you should be doing. A lot of people don't understand the separate levels of government. So people call me and complain about the parks. I don't, we have a park district. They have their own board or school system. I'm not over the schools. I think the common issues as a community, when you focus on the community, of course, right now, especially with COVID, are the budgets. What will the municipal budgets look like? I have been very active with National League of Cities in advocating for direct aid to the municipalities. We launched the Cities Are Essential campaign several months ago. And so I've been advocating and working closely with them, talking with my federal legislators and, writing letters and just doing those different types of outreach. So the budget is we always are talking about economic development, how we can get more businesses, and development in our communities, and safety for some of us. That's not always an issue depending on the size of the community and the location. So.
What about property tax? That seems to be something that I know in your debate with the incumbent, there was a lot of discussion about property tax. And I think actually, as I remember your exchange, a very large percentage of your property tax revenues went into police and fire pensions, almost like a third, was it?
Pensions are the nightmare for all mayors. And Kankakee is no exception. For years, probably when I was a little girl, decisions were made to not fully fund our pensions. And so it's a black eye on our community. We just actually went to the market to bond. And of course, that conversation comes up. We did something unique in the city of Kankakee in my administration. We actually raised our sales tax, which you're going, oh my gosh. But we had one of the lowest sales tax rates in the state. We were at 6.25%. So I'm in Kankakee County, and then there's Will County, and then Cook County. So Cook County, I think, is 10% sales tax. So, I looked across the state, Danville, Bloomington, all over, Naperville, and we were low. We were 6.25%. So what we decided to do was raise our sales tax an additional 2% to 8.25, which is still very reasonable. We allocated by ordinance because we are a home rural community. We decided by ordinance that extra 2% is going to police and fire pensions, and it's split evenly. So what that did for our taxpayers, our property owners, on their tax bill where it says pension for police and fire, it reduced that number. So most of our property owners saw a reduction of about 20% on their property taxes. But this continues to be an issue. Even though the city wasn't paying their share for years. Um, I think in the early 2000s, the police and fire went to court, and so the city had to start paying. There's an actuary that calculates the amount, and the city had to start paying that. And under the previous mayor, she did a great job. They paid that. Um, but it's still not enough. As we have had a recent conversation, to bond, they want us to, to get over the 90%. They want us to get over the 100%. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for communities that are in this situation. And there's a lot of us dealing with this issue.
Well, let's kind of in a broad sense, what are the best parts of the job and what are the most frustrating? How do you put together the ledger for being mayor?
The best part of the job is that this is my hometown that I grew up in, and I get to play a role in reshaping our community. Kankakee gets a black eye a lot because quite frankly, we are the most diverse community and the largest municipality in our county. And so there may be things happening in two towns over that don't get the publicity that Kankakee gets. And I want people to grow up here and to dream big and to have, vision for their lives and their families. And I want them to be in an environment where they can grow and be nurtured and get the supports and resources and skills they need. And I want them to thrive and be successful. So the connection to people, I would say, the opportunity to be a part of that change, working with the community. The downside are the isms. As a woman, as a person of color, as someone who's trying to move us forward with people who are kind of stuck in what Kankakee used to be and are fearful of that change. But the change is here and we need to embrace it and we need to be visionary and redefine ourselves. That's where we are. That's the opportunity we have. And that's the opportunity that comes out of adversity. You have opportunity to grow.
We had one question emailed in. Linda from Springfield had a whole assortment of questions about Kankakee Community College in terms of its role in the community, its current situation, its relationship to Governor State University. So tell us a little bit about the community college and how important it is to your community.
Well, I am an alum of the community college. Wow. So for me, I have a very special place for our community college. I had my first child at 18 and I was able to put myself through school there. They have some, flexible programs, for non-traditional students like I was. They've really stepped up as a partner. We've had some industry expansion in the county. And so they've been really creative and innovative in partnering with some of those industries to create an apprenticeship type programs where people can come there and learn, but then have 3 days of work experience on the job training type. So they've been great about that. They've been instrumental for us at the city because there wasn't a lot of training and kind of succession planning going on in the city. And so we've utilized them to help us with some of that training and leadership development and even just having a mission and vision for the city. We didn't have that before. So I've been really proud to work with them in that way.
Okay. Well, let's ask about, some of your political role models or heroes. I mean, who are some of the political figures either, in the state or even nationally that have really inspired you?
Well, I remember Paul Simon I was a little kid though. I remember my mom talking about him, and you of course remember the bow ties. His daughter, Sheila, I had the opportunity to meet, and I really liked her a lot. I felt like she was really personable and just a really strong advocate and a strong woman. In terms of political, I would say, Michelle Obama wasn't elected, but certainly as a person of color, what she endured being the first, in her role. And she did it with such grace. She did it with such grace. And I look to her example a lot. Going high when people go low. People go really low and they go low a lot. And they have no shame about it. So I really look to her a lot, and hear her voice a lot. Um, the Roosevelts, Eleanor Roosevelt was somebody I admired. Um, and Frances Perkins, who was a social worker. And I brag about her. I call her a bad mama jamma. She wasn't, a lot of the first ladies, are known, Jacqueline Kennedy was beautiful and known for her fashion and style. And, Eleanor Roosevelt and Frances Perkins were really, to me, just pioneer women. Frances Perkins was the first woman to ever serve in a presidential cabinet. She was the Secretary of Labor, and she is one of my sheroes, because a lot of the things we take for granted in this country as working people, she helped implement those protections for us. Minimum wage, safety laws, OSHA, child labor laws, and I don't think she's celebrated enough. I think we should have a Frances Perkins Day in this country.
Wow. Well, let's presume that COVID will ease, sometime this spring or summer. And for people who are in the area and they want to take a look at Kankakee, I mean, where are some of the places they should go to? How should they spend a half day in Kankakee?
Well,
or a full day.
Well, if it's a warm day like summer, we have a lot of different activities down in downtown Kankakee. We have a farmers market that's ranked in the top 10 in the state of Illinois, so we're known for that. We have our beautiful river where people can, if they are, riverfront people and they have canoes and those types of things. And people like to fish there as well. We have a lot of people that come from Indiana and other places to fish. We have a beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright home. We actually have two. They're next door to one another, but we have the B. Harley Bradley house on South Harrison in Kankakee. Is a beautiful home. And prior to becoming a mayor, I had no idea that there's a group of people in this country that travel all over to see his homes, and that's like their thing. And so we have that jewel right in the city of Kankakee. We have some lovely parks down by the river. Cobb Park is my favorite, very beautiful park along the river. So those are a few things I would encourage people to check out if they were to visit our community.
I saw in one of your talks you mentioned that as a little girl there were like boat races in Kankakee that were a real kind of community
Labor Day weekend. We don't have those anymore, but we do have a dynamic executive director of our park district. She's recently new in her role as well. She's been in our community for a few years, and we've talked about bringing some of those festivals back and creating different festivals. And then of course COVID hit. So we'll continue to look for ways that we can bring people together and attract people to our community as well.
Well, final question, this job looks awful busy and your life looks pretty full, to put it mildly. How do you relax? How do you kind of decompress and enjoy life when you're not serving in a very public role as mayor?
I am very fortunate to be married to Keith Armstrong. We've been together over 30 years. So I love coming home. We're empty nesters now. So coming home and just, having quiet time with him. I love to read. I enjoy music, particularly jazz. And I like to travel. So don't get to do a lot of that, but I do love water, going to places like Michigan and places where there's water, the Caribbean. And I have a grandbaby that's 2 years old. So I FaceTime with him, and that always makes the day better.
Okay. Well, final question. I know you're running for re-election. I think a primary in February and the general election in April, if I have that right. What would you, if the people of Kankakee re-elect you, what would you like to do in your second term?
I would like to continue the work that I've started, leading the community inclusively, being strategic and leveraging the relationships and networks that we have, that we're connected to. I really want to continue to help us bring economic development in our community and address our housing needs. we haven't built new apartments in literally 50 years. And so I'm working with a developer right now out of Milwaukee to start that project. And so I just want to continue doing that good work. And I really want to make sure that as we move forward, particularly as leaders who are in charge of millions of dollars of resources, in making the systemic changes that we need to make so that our community is more inclusive and fair and equitable, because if we lift up those areas that are struggling, the entire community is going to benefit from that.
Great. Well, Mayor, we will follow your work with interest, and I urge people in Southern Illinois as they're heading up north to when COVID allows, make a stop in Kankakee and head up to the riverfront and walk around downtown and see what your community is like, and maybe swing by the mayor's office and say hello.
Say hello.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you all for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor. And thank you for watching another edition of our series, Meet the Mayor. This interview will be on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow, so please watch that and pass it on to your friends. And thank you for supporting the Institute and keeping the legacy of Paul Simon alive and well. Thank you.